Are we recording yet? Sorry, I can't see it on. I've got too many screens.
Yeah, we're good now.
Okay, right on. So I'll give a super quick version of that intro, but my name is Joel Thomas. I'll be doing schedule training part two of our three-part series here today, going over an updated monthly schedule and our review checklist. So, oops, sorry. So first things first, I know we always incorporate the HDOT core values, kind of emphasize the same ones that we had mentioned in our first schedule training, but accountability, community, and teamwork are kind of the three that we're looking at when we're talking schedules. Accountability, schedules provide a framework for tracking completion based on contract time and budgets. We have community engagement. Schedules keep the public informed and manage expectations. And then teamwork, of course, shared leadership involving schedule management.
Yeah.
So the training outline today, we're looking at the dashboard and milestones. We're going to do a little refresher on viewing schedules and using Autodesk Construction Cloud to kind of be able to filter and look at data. We're going to be utilizing ACC to review a monthly update critical path method schedule using the new checklist, and also kind of looking at the PDF printout of the schedule. And then lastly would be we're going to be updating the project schedule in the ACC schedule module. So some takeaways from this training, we're looking at project. So these are things that I would hope you guys would kind of things that you would take away from this training is the main bullets being the project is using the correct milestones. So this is kind of a really important one that we want to start emphasizing on all of our projects, that the project schedules are being submitted through the submittals module on ACC. And I'll get more into that. And then that ACC and the checklist are being used to review schedule submittals. Getting into kind of the why behind that. So schedules are a shared project resource, not solely for the contractor. I'm noting that this is in the spec. So a lot of what I hear is, hey, the schedule is the contractor's means and methods. Who am I to tell them what to do? And that's true to a degree, but I think it's really important that we understand that the schedule is not solely for use of the contractor. There are obviously other pieces to it that involve us on the owner side, particularly, substantial completion when you start seeing that date slip out and there's no reason entered. These are all things that we need to really start to become more aware of and better track. We also want to, bullet number 2, minimize delays and associated delay costs to the state. So this is something that we collectively want to improve upon. There's so many projects that are, delayed, and without being able to, explain that to HDOT upper management, or, kind of being able to understand why your project is delayed is a really critical piece. And then the last bullet, accurate schedule information is used by HDOT upper management to track construction progress. So this is being done through the dashboards module that we had touched on before. We're trying to still fine tune and clean that up so that we can present a just clean, easy way for HDOT upper management to be able to log in and see all of their projects and see where everything is at, and be able to track it through these key milestones. So the required milestones that we are enforcing on the projects now are listed here in these bullets. Basically, you have notice to proceed, not NTP. We have start work, pre-final inspection, final inspection, contractual completion, and substantial completion. That is a lot of milestones, and I would guess that most of the projects probably do not have all of these. But but we want to start using these, and I'll get more into the reasoning behind that. You know, basically, looking at these milestones, you've got that's based on a date listed on the letter. The start work, same thing. So you should be able to, easily track those. For pre-final inspection, the reason that we want to have this milestone entered, if you read through the specs, section 10808B, there is talk in there about doing kind of a lesser liquidated damages, kind of like allotment, I guess, so to speak. So in other words, like once you hit your pre-final inspection, and let's say the project is still not completed in the contractual obligation, you charge, like a lesser amount on LDs. It's 20% of what is listed on your contract. So being these things, like milestones on your schedule, is kind of the goal here, so that we can really kind of drill on, how we're tracking the schedules, looking at LDs at the end of the project, how we're sorting through the delays and delay claims from the contractor. And then final inspection is kind of the same thing. And then contractual completion. So this one we'll get a little bit more into, but I like adding this one in because it's basically a milestone that has no ties to the schedule. It just sits there on the date that your contract is obligated to be completed. The only time that this would move is if you were to execute a time extension change order. So it's kind of a marker that tells you your date of, what you're looking at as far as at the end of your project. So this is just an example. I logged into our dashboard to kind of take a look at it, and I noticed right off the top that I saw that we have a notice to proceed milestone on one project. Another one calls it NTP. So what we're asking is that all these milestones are just called notice to proceed. And so that would be a comment you would make back to your contractors. The reason is then we can create this dashboard that filters out all of our notice to proceeds. We're not missing any projects because a project just has it listed as NTP. That's kind of a little bit more behind the scenes of what we're trying to do, as far as establishing, kind of like uniformity on all the projects. So now I'm actually going to transition this training into ACC. We're going to take a look at this fictitious project that I created and kind of go through how you would review an updated schedule using ACC tools and kind of the PDF reader. So bear with me 1 second here. Okay, so when I first my project, you are taken to your project home screen. I'm just going to quickly show you guys all the areas that I would see like schedule affected in ACC. So I do like to do this. There's this little dashboard. It says project progress that I think everyone sees when they log into their projects. I like to update these because it kind of gives you a snapshot of where your project is at. So it's helpful and handy to everybody that accesses your project. It's really easy to do. Is that you have to manually enter everything. This isn't linked to any schedule or anything. So you do have to kind of come in here and manually create. And then, as things happen, you just hit a little checkbox and it means that milestone has completed. So that's kind of how we use this little area. You don't have to use it, but I'd recommend it. It's just a nice, quick, easy little thing to do for your entire project team to understand where your project is at, where your substantial completion is looking. If that starts sliding, you can update those milestones and whatnot. Looking over at the Sorry, lost my train of thought. So now we're looking at the schedule tab, right? This is the other big one that you'll, typically use as a when you're looking at schedules. Just wanted to highlight here. What I started doing is I call these boxes here stacks, and you can see the little V2, and this one has a V3. Basically, this means that what I'm doing is I'm creating one stack as my approved project schedule. This is my clean schedules that have been accepted on the project. So I kind of use this internal review one so that I can drop in every version of a submittal that I get on the schedule. So what I mean by that is, let's say I have a April 2025 update coming soon here. Let's say I get that schedule, I review it, I would drop it into my internal review first, and then I would review it, make comments, get it back to the contractor. The contractor makes the corrections. They get me a new schedule, and then I would update it again here. So I would end up with like a lot of versions in this internal part until I get an actual acceptable and approved version of that schedule. That's when I would drop it into my kind of more shared across the dashboards and everything version of that schedule. So I'm kind of using these two stacks. And what I typically do is I make this internal one, you can actually toggle it to be restricted. So, it means that not everyone can see it. And, it's almost just like your area to kind of use as a tool for review. So I've hidden that one, and I've got my approved stack here. Now I'm gonna go look at, or actually, let me back up a second. I'm just going to explain what this project is, so you guys have a little bit of context as to what we're looking at here. So this is my special provisions for the project. I mean, essentially, it's a made up project. Again, this is my Interstate Route H5 rehabilitation project. It's got looks like 150 calendar days with a DBE goal of 5%. Yokua Smith is our design project manager. And I did a little scope in here just so we can see. So this is a rehabilitation project. It includes ramps and roadways, implementation of new asphalt resurfacing, Portland cement concrete pavement, guardrail installation, traffic counting systems, highway lighting, drainage system improvements, concrete sidewalks, pavement markings. I just tried to kind of throw elements of, what a lot of our typical projects look like into this so that we can kind of see, get a better idea of what an actual schedule would look like. So that's more or less the scope of the project. And then for a little more context, we also, as far as the start date, I set it for September 15th was my NTP, and then of 2025, so it's future. And then my first update to the schedule was at the end of September, so it was actually a 2-week update at September 30th. And then now we have progressed that schedule all the way to the end of October. And we're looking at, so our next update is the October update. So we're jumping forward in time. This is November now. And that's kind of what we're going to be looking at is the updated schedule to this project. So I'm going to jump over to the forms, which is another thing I wanted to highlight to the group. So under your forms tab, we did add in, hopefully it got to all your projects by now, but let us know if you don't see it, or send an email to econ and we'll make sure it's added to your project. But under forms, ungroup templates, you'll see this progress schedule update checklist new. So this is the one that we just added in. I'm going to select this. When you get into this form, you would create your form, and I'll just quickly run through these tabs and how you would kind of look at this thing. but you would enter your form date, description. I would probably call it something like October 2025 schedule update. And then you start scrolling through these tabs. This first tab is general schedule information tab. So you'll see here, there's just kind of like questions that ask, that sort of initiate these little review pieces that kind of help you go through the schedule and know what to look for and that kind of thing. A lot of this is pulled from the specs. Some of it is just best practice. And some of it is kind of a blend of the two. But you would scroll through all your questions here and then kind of, enter the data, yes, no. You could add notes on, whatever. And then we have a tab for the project milestones.
August payment?
Yeah.
So we do have a tab for the project milestones here. Basically, your milestones are as we've laid out already. So you're going to kind of walk through these tabs, and we're going to do this together in just a hot minute, but just wanted to at least show you what the form looks like. Now, the last tab that I wanted to show you related to schedules is the submittals. So like I mentioned off the top, we want these schedules to come in as submittals. These are required by the spec. So it's, that's how they should be being submitted. I've seen a lot of different ways of this happening, whether it be an email from a contractor or them just uploading it into like a shared folder, under files or something like that. So the cleanest, best way to do this is to just have your contractor, and even if you've been doing it like this for 20 months, just start it now and just say, all right, what we want to start having the schedule submitted through the submittal module. This gives us a chance to review the schedule. And if we have comments, we can kick it back and clean it up until we get it to a point where we're all in agreement, or at least somewhat of an agreement on the schedule. And then, that we're all working together on it instead of just, blindly accepting whatever the contractor's submitting. So in this case, my submittal came in. It looks like I have my October 2025 progress schedule update. It's in review. It's in my review. I'm going to look here. I'm going to see the attachments they've added. It looks like we've got a XER file. That means when you see that, it's a P6 raw file. You could also see MPP for projects. So if you see the .mpp or .xer, that means it's like an actual raw schedule file, which is good. That's what we want. And then I also see there's a PDF here. So I would download both of these. And then once I have that, I would have my form kind of ready to go. I'm going to take a look. I'm going to use a form that I've already filled out in the essence of trying to save some time here, but I'll kind of show you how I filled that out as we go here. So I downloaded my schedule and the XER file. I've got the form kind of ready to go. I'm going to scroll down to my schedule tab and then make sure that the schedule. So this is where I would update my schedule here with that raw file. So I'm going to hit update schedule. Oh, hang on. Every now and then it like does this weird thing where it cuts off. Let me refresh the page. So when you click these little dots, you can just update your schedule this way. You can also go inside of the schedule and update it there. There's different ways to do it. But I'm going to hit update schedule. I'm going to load in the file, the XER file that I just downloaded. I'd already done this, so I'm not going to do it again. But so now I've got my version 3 loaded here. This is my October update. I'm going to open that up. And so when I log in, this is showing me the latest updated schedule that I just got as my submittal. And I have that ready to go. I'm going to open up the PDF as well. This is kind of a multi-step process, but I just want to make sure I kind of have all my ducks in a row before I start looking at doing the review of this schedule. So the PDF itself, it looks like there's a submittal cover sheet. And then we've got a time scaled logic diagram printout of our schedule. It looks like they're showing it with a WBS or a work breakdown structure here. And that goes all the way down. Now, real quick on the PDF, I'll just kind of explain this out a little bit, but a lot of you guys probably see these and don't know exactly what you're looking at. But so the reason this is so blown out, by the way, it's like this real zoomed out file, is I actually followed the spec exactly of what it says. It tells you exactly what columns to put in the specs on these PDF printouts of the schedule. So I just wanted to add it all in there to show you guys what that looks like. You'll probably see different versions of this, but this is what the spec requires: is activity ID, name, original duration, remaining duration, start date, finish date, total float, activity percent, complete, and resources. So we'll get into that a little bit more. And then when you see kind of like these highlighted headers, it means that it's what's called a work breakdown structure. It's how the contractor has organized their schedule, and they're basically breaking it into kind of more workable chunks to get through. So I prefer having these filters. If you don't see this on your schedule, you just see a ton of activities. I would ask that the contractor include a printout that does a work breakdown structure like this. It's just a little bit easier to go through. Under these headings, you see, submittals prepared and submitted. So these are all the submittals that are to be prepared and submitted. And then kind of looking through, you can sort of see how the job is laid out and going to be built. On the right side here, this is the Gantt chart. So again, you've probably seen versions of this that are a little different, like 1,000 lines going everywhere. I personally don't like that. That's when that's basically showing you all the connection ties to all the activities themselves, how they're tied together. That's what all those lines are. So I usually ask contractors to also turn that off when they submit this, and it just makes it a little easier to read and understand. This blue line here is my data date line. In other words, that's the line that signifies what this schedule has been progressed to. When you see, like in this case, the blue boxes, this means these are things that have all happened already. So they've been notated by the contractor as being started or completed. When you see the green here, this means that these are activities that have not yet completed. So you still have, you're still tracking completion on those. When you see the red lines, this is critical path items, meaning if any of these red items shift one day, your project substantial completion date will also move one day. So really important to always pay attention to your critical path when looking at schedules. That's kind of the probably biggest thing that you should be looking at to understand your substantial completions. So this is my schedule that I got from these guys. We're going to do a little review on this. I'm going to click over to a version that I started marking up already, just in the essence of saving a little time. But so this is that same schedule that I kind of added my comments in via my form. So let's take a look at the form itself. So starting out, our continuing schedule requirement. So this is a straight reference from 10806E. Basically, if you look at this spec, there's actually kind of a lot of stuff that is required on schedules. I sort of allocated that list here. You can feel free to look at the spec, and if you want to see different things or even more stuff, you can just cite the entire spec section if you want. But for me personally, I do like to see PDF printout of the schedule showing all activities with a work breakdown structure, and then critical path remaining activity schedule, a raw schedule file, so the XER or an MPP, a report or a narrative that outlines added activities. It's really helpful. And then critical path changes, critical path delay, a logic report. These are all things that, and I'll show you an example of what these things look like. But my first comment here was that, all we had was basically a 2-page schedule that showed me all of the activities. So I was asking them to include a narrative report and TSLD showing also like another schedule that shows me just the critical path remaining work, and then a logic report that shows predecessors, successors, that kind of thing. So that was my first comment back. I added it on my checklist here. I also added this into my PDF. So I added kind of general comments up here. These basically, all of these comments on this are also in my little checklist. So it's a little redundancy, but just trying to drive the point. Looking down, we've got, has progress for this period been adequately as-builted? So I said no. Some of the logic needs to be corrected, including marked up PDF for more details. So if I look on my PDF, basically when I looked at this schedule, I noticed right away that, so if I zoom in here, my substantial completion originally was, I think, February 25th. So I've actually lost 39 days, which is kind of strange because this is actually a 30-day time period that we're looking at here. So in 30 days, I've lost 39 days. And this is actual, like I've literally seen this on multiple schedules from contractors before, where all of a sudden I'm showing delays that are like going, that don't make sense. So this tells me that there's a logic bust on this schedule. So I did make a comment saying, hey, substantial completion moved 39 days and a 31-day update. We need to fix the logic. As I kind of looked even further into this, hey, Kai. As I kind of looked further into this, we had RFI delay. I see that was an activity that got added, and there's my 39 days. So that tells me right away that this is probably where my bust is. And we can look at that a little bit better in a little bit more in our ACC schedule as well. So if I click over to that, I'm going to show, let's do a quick compare here. So I'm going to compare my schedules. You'll see kind of all these filters here that show you that right now what we're looking at is a difference between the version 2 schedule and this version 3 schedule. So it would be the difference between my September update and then now my October update. And so you can see here that in my September update, I had a substantial completion date of February 25th, 2026. This update shows April 5th, 2026. So wonder what happened here. One cool thing about this is I can actually filter and just show me new. I kind of like this one. So this is just going to show me the new activities that were added in this update. So let's click that. And lo and behold, there we go. There's my new RFI delay item. And then I've got some other new item that was added in the schedule as well. But when I click on this RFI delay, it actually pops up a little box on the side here. It looks like I have a predecessor of unspecified. So that means there is no predecessor to this activity. I do have a successor of PCC pavement submittal review and approval. So it looks like so that's on my critical path. So I know that this RFI is driving my critical path. And it looks like there is a 39-day delay. Interesting. So let's say I know that this RFI was actually responded to on October 15th, yet it's showing on my PDF printout here that it's not finished until November 25th, which is actually in the future. So there's obviously something weird with this activity. I've asked them to fix the logic on it, but I'm also noting in here, hey, this activity was actually completed on October 15th. So we need to fix the successor, predecessor. And then I noted over here, what it looks like to me is that because my predecessor is this PCC pavement submittal, and look at that, they're finishing on the same day. So that tells me that there's probably an error in how this is linked to this activity, and it's most likely a finish to finish relationship to the activity, and that is wrong. So I noted that here. Looks like this is a finish to finish activity. We need to fix the logic. So again, this is just, I know this is getting into the weeds a little bit on what you're looking at with these schedules, but it's ultimately trying to understand your substantial completion date. You're always keeping an eye on that. And you want to understand what activities are driving that out. So if at a minimum, you should be trying to figure out where these delays are coming from, and then kind of noting that with your contractor, and making sure that everyone is on the same page with understanding what the delays are. So I'm going to click back to my form here. So we did kind of add in that we need to fix some logic. Has the progress for this period been adequately as builted? And that just means, when you're looking at your schedule, when you see an A next to a date, that means actual. So that means that the contractor has marked this as started. And here's an example of like pre-construction submittals. It shows this was started on this 15th, and then it was finished on October 22nd. So, when you get your updates, you want to look at these dates and make sure that you agree, or you would more or less agree with when these dates are marked as finished and completed. And that's what those A's mean. It's basically telling me like, okay, this has started and finished. This has started. This hasn't finished. That's kind of a little quick way how to look at that. And then you'll see here too on your Gantt chart on the side, you can kind of see like a percent complete. It starts to fill in these boxes. It's showing me that, what percentage complete these are at. So that's kind of another handy way to look at this. So as you go through this checklist, you're going to notice just certain questions that are kind of like meant to just trigger you to start thinking about these things. So continue to fill out your data. The status date matches or is after the period end date. This is another good one. I've seen this a lot where status date of a schedule. So in this case, they're calling it an October 31st schedule update, but we know that, I'd like to double check that. And it looks like when I look at my schedule module, it'll tell you the data date here is actually October 28th. So this means that the contractor didn't progress the schedule to the date that they're claiming they did. So there's actually a little bit of a miss there. That would be another comment I would make. So status date shows 10/20. I said 10/29. It should have been 28. But the period end date is noted as 10/31. So that would need to get updated. The only activity without predecessors is the activity with the earliest start date. And then I'll jump to the next one, which is basically the same thing, but saying that all activities also need to have a successors. So when you click in, there is a quick way, and Marshall just showed me how to do this right before this started, but you can click in here and show me. Oh, I think maybe you can't do it if it's in share mode or compare.
Compare mode, yeah.
Bear with me 1 second.
It makes maybe I'm not aware.
Yeah, so you can look here and basically this is how you can get an idea of what is tied to what, if you can't see it. Another way you can do this is you can turn on your dependencies under the configure here, and that's going to show you all the squiggly lines that go everywhere. Again, this is kind of confusing for even me to look at, so I usually don't use that feature. So I'm going to turn that back off, but you can use it if you like that. And then here I can kind of see quickly like what activities have predecessors, what activities have successors, and you can kind of just roll through this list and see if anything is missing, that kind of thing. In the essence of time, what I'm going to do is go back to my compare feature, and I'm just going to let's just pretend that, I know that all my previous versions of this schedule were good and had good predecessors and successors. So this is just looking forward. I can use my new item tab to just see what items were added in the schedule and isolate it that way. And I'm just going to check both of these activities to make sure that they're configured correctly. And again, so the RFI delay, it looked like there was no predecessor. And I'm going to click on to my new TCS epoxy and cure. It looks like we had a predecessor, but there's no successor. So what we want is we want to have basically the only two activities that don't have a predecessor or successor would be the start work for your project milestone and the substantial completion. So the bookends of your project. Those are the only two. Is your start work wouldn't have a predecessor, right? And your substantial completion wouldn't have a successor. So basically, everything in between that should be tied to something so that your schedule logic works correctly, right? When you're progressing your schedules. So this is why we like to make sure that there are predecessors and successors for all those activities. That's another comment I would make here is that to make sure that we include those new items, particularly to have those successors and predecessors. Any changes to the critical path activities, and I marked here, yes, the logic needs to be corrected. So we already kind of walked through some of the reasoning behind that. It was due to that RFI that was added in. Our labor resources allocated to the activities. So this is another one that you can check, via your filter here. How you can look at this is you can actually go to your configure button and hit labor resource. And what it does is it kind of pops it onto your Gantt chart here. And you can see that these labor resources have not been assigned to these new activities. But if I go back to like let's just go back to the main schedule, and I'm going to add that bubble in. And you can see that the rest of our activities do have labor resources added. This is a spec requirement that we have resources loaded to all of our activities. It's important to know like who's doing what work, particularly. It's important to know who's doing what work so that, well, I was going to say for our side, for example, we want to know when, what items are in our kind of under our responsibility, right? If we know that like all the submittals that have to be approved are under our umbrella, then obviously if there's critical path pieces to that, then we want to make sure that we're understanding exactly what needs to be done. And then further, it would be like, to understand how the contractor is going to be completing their work, right? You want to know, okay, like how many crews are you going to have? What subs are doing what work? We want to know like all of those details. Does that answer it, Kai? Or did you have anything?
Getting close.
Okay, getting close.
Because if people, they're working, they could have 2 guys or they could have 20 guys.
Yeah.
So understanding the resources applied to that also helps you understand, are they at pace? Are they going slower? Do they need more resources to stay on track?
Right.
So monitoring the resources as well as the durations helps you work with the contractor. Say, hey, that's not the way you planned your work. What's going on? Or vice versa, right? You get a lot of people should go quicker. You get less people logically goes slower.
So I don't know if you guys heard that, but to recap, basically Kai was mentioning that it's important to understand, the crew sizes and, the more people that the contractor has on a crew, the quicker the work will go, or vice versa. So it's important to kind of have all these.
It's got 1 guy, Marshall, and 12 guys working.
Yeah.
So it's,
Because it was on force accounting.
One thing that commonly comes up is if the contractor is delayed at all, and we'd hope to accelerate their progress or meet the contract date, if they have critical path items that are in series, but those work items don't depend on each other being done, it's just how they plan their crew sizes, they could then do some of those in parallel if they have the resources available. So getting them to um, to tell you what their resources are up front allows you to do that analysis, and everyone can speak truthfully.
Totally agree. Yeah. So understanding the resources could be, it's like a shared commodity in ways, right? It's important for the schedule. So that part of it would be the kind of resources, making sure that everything has resources. I added comment that there was a couple missing off of the new items. So that ends that list, and then you're getting into kind of more the milestones. So we talked about at the top, making sure that all projects have these 6 milestones added. So notice to proceed, start work, pre-final inspection, final, contraction completion. No, yeah, nope, yeah, we went through all that, and we want to make sure that those the verbiage is exact. And to show you an example, my schedule here had NTP, so my comments on this milestones category, these are all my milestones. It looks like I'm a few light, so I am going to add a comment saying change the milestone name NTP to notice to proceed, add new milestone contractual completion for 2/25/26, especially since the substantial completion is now pushed out. We want to be able to track that date, and then add a new milestone for pre-final inspection and final inspection. Those were also missing on this schedule. So that is the importance of that. And if you guys didn't take away anything else I've said, at least try to take that one away. That's probably the most important one we're trying to work out right now. And then there's a few others in here. Have any new milestones been added? This is kind of more just for future updates. So I said no. Any milestone dates changed? Yes, I did. I did want to add here that if you're seeing that like your substantial completion is pushing out, but there's other milestones that are kind of tied in with that aren't moving as well, that should be. That would mean that they're not tied correctly to the activities. So it's just something to notice, to look at all your milestones. Your milestones are typically all on your critical path. So once something shifts, they all kind of start shifting, is what you should see. And so you kind of want to make note of whether or not those are moving. And then more redundancy, has the substantial completion milestone changed? And then at the bottom here, I added, has the contractual completion date milestone changed? Again, on the contractual completion date, this is the one milestone that you're going to have that has no ties to your schedule. It's just sitting there on your contractually required completion date. It only moves if you execute a time extension change order that's going to push that out. So that's the only times you would move that date. And it's a way to track, for at the end of the project, delays, liquidated damages, that sort of thing. So that's the milestones tab here. And then the last tab is just kind of task description and durations. It's a little bit more basic, just kind of clean housekeeping, I would call it, on your schedule. But do new task descriptions and durations adequately define work scope, kind of a sanity check based on your knowledge and experience. So it's just looking at, particularly because it's a schedule update and you've theoretically already looked at everything else, you would say that your new activities that were added in this update, whether or not they make sense, and are again within the 20 working days. So this is another spec requirement, that the schedule activities are supposed to be 20 working days or less. So when you start having these activities that are, longer than that, you would typically break it up into a little bit more manageable chunks. I know there's a lot of, like procurement items and stuff like that you don't need to break that up further. Yes.
There's a question in the chat asking, what happens if can you hit that export
so that the contractor knows what your checklist looks like? And do we want the contractor to have the checklist?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. That's what I was going to, actually, I was just about to get to that. So we'll talk about that. So what?
Andy's also.
Chat. So for this particular contract, this is a calendar day. I was just trying to keep it simple. But yeah, there's kind of a lot of, you know, a lot of contracts are calendar day that I see, but then it gets kind of a little bit weird with the working days that are, you know, it's like you can only work Monday through Friday, but it's a calendar day contract. And your traffic control probably only allows that. But just to keep it simple for this particular example, I'm using it as a calendar day just so I don't have to like worry about, oh, this falls on a Sunday. I'm pretending that our contractor can just work through all of it. But yeah, so we're going to show kind of how to export that schedule or the checklist. So once I get through this, I'm going to hit export. I'm going to run the report here.
The question is, can you give them a blank one if they know what to expect? Or is that like
I mean,
cards? They're like, I'm only going to do what's on the checklist. I'm not going to do anything else.
I would hold off on that. I mean, because yeah, I don't want to tell everyone like this is all you have to do. This is the new requirement. The specs are a little bit more thorough than what's even on this checklist. So I wouldn't use this as hand it to your contractor and say, make sure you're complying. You can kind of use it as a tool to show them like, this is what I'm looking for. But
There's also contractor has to satisfy the engineer. So if you want extra stuff, they're supposed to comply with that.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, the specs really have a lot of stringent requirements, and I would say a majority of projects don't follow all of that, but you know, some are pretty good. I don't want to say that everyone is bad at this. All the contractors, like there are a lot of good schedules out there. But yeah, so after you export that, basically what I would do is take my PDF, however you're wanting to get these comments back to your contractor. I would take the PDF with all my comments on it and maybe the checklist also, go upload that into the schedule module, submittal module, and then return it R&R and wait for the resubmittal. So once I get my resubmittal, I'm just going to show you. This is kind of more or less what I was hoping to get out of the contractor. This is my new one that I just got from the contractor after giving them all of my comments. This is my Rev 1 to that same submittal. So it looks like they've included, you know, more of a narrative report. Got a list of contents that includes a milestone summary, progress made last period, critical path summary, schedule changes, current and potential delays with TSLD, WBS, critical path remaining with WBS, a logic report, and of course the XER file. So I like what I'm seeing here. You know, this report I threw together, it's not great, but just to show you something, it kind of helps you be able to, like, you could actually read through this report and not even have to go full blown into your full schedule review. So having like a nice PDF printout of all of this information is helpful. And then, you know, we added in a little bit of the delay piece. So, you know, having narratives that from the contractor that explain their viewpoint on what the delays are that are shown is important as well, just to kind of have a rough idea. And remember that if contractors are claiming delay that is, you know, at fault of HDOT, they do need to be following the spec requirements under 10805, I believe it is, to, you know, provide those notifications to the state. It's, you know, it's not enough for them to just include it in a schedule update and say, hey, look, you acknowledge my schedule, you know, now you owe me a bunch of delay. They have to be notifying the owner and giving within the time frame and all that, because we see a lot of that too. I'm just going to show you real quick. So it looks like on this updated schedule, I'm showing now 14 days of delay instead of 39, right? So it looks like they've corrected a lot of the information that I had put in there. So we have all of our project milestones now added in here. I have notice to proceed, start work. This other one is actually part of another training I'm doing coming up. And then contract completion milestone was added in here on the 25th. We have pre-final inspection added in. We have substantial completion and final inspection. These are actually kind of both linked together. That's why they filtered this way. So, and then looking down, another thing that I forgot to mention, I was talking to Marshall about this. We came to an agreement. What we like to see is when WBS created for delays up towards the top of your schedule printout. And it's just a nice clean way to track all of the delays. So I'm just going to click back because I think I did add this as a comment in here. So looking at this comment here, add activity to the new WBS delays needs to also, I added in here that this activity name was pretty light. It just said RFI delay. I like, particularly when it's relating to a delay, I want to see a little bit more details and information. So I asked them to give better description on what that activity is, and give it its own WBS category, right? So clicking back to that one we were just looking at. So in this update, there's a nice new category for delays. That RFI was added in here. RFI 1 clarification needed for them to get this submittal completed and submitted. There's now an actual start date and actual finish date. Looks like they fixed the logic ties with this item. So it just gives me a better picture of what we're looking at right now. It's a cleaner, it's still showing delay, and then you can kind of roll down in your schedule here, and there's my 14-day delay, which is affecting the PCC pavement submittal review and approval package. And then you can kind of look down and see where there's other delays going on. We have a delay with our NPDES permit. It looks like I tried to use real life scenarios because I know these are things people deal with. But let's just say, okay, now I'm good. The schedule looks great. We're going to kind of move out of this now, go back into here. We're going to accept and approve or acknowledge the submittal. And then the last things I would do is come into my schedule module, and I would update, my overall approved schedule with the new clean version. And that'll be reflected on the dashboard that we went over early on. So now my data will look right on the dashboard. I have all my milestones added in. Everything is looking good. And then the very last thing I would do, I know we talked about this a little bit, but I would come in here and just clean up my project progress here. I would, kind of add in the new that we made them add, adjust the dates. It looks like our substantial is going to push out. So I would just come in here and clean all this up so that we have a better picture of our project for our team. And that's kind of the end of that part. I'll just, I think I had a couple more slides at the very end of this. So just a recap of what we went through today. We had the ACC schedule module overview, updated schedules sent through the submittals module, ensuring your milestone naming conventions are correct and exist. Access your progress schedule update checklist in the ACC forms. Use the schedule module and PDF reader to review the schedule. Enter your comments and disposition in the submittals module. Verify your comments have been implemented in the resubmittal. Update your overall progress schedule in the schedule module. And then lastly, updating your dashboard milestones on the project home screen. I think I got it in on just under the hour here. But any questions? No questions. No.
Well, are you able to hang out a little bit longer?
Yeah, no, I can absolutely hang out. So if those of you, if anyone has to leave, understandable. But if anyone wants to hang out and maybe ask questions. it'll all be recorded and posted on the wiki. I did get a couple of emails on that this morning. So yeah,
And send out.
we'll send it out with a newsletter, I'm told too. So stay tuned. Anyone had anything? I'm gonna try to find the chat.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Great job. That form is going to be helpful. Is that already in ACC forms? Is that something that we need to receive from you and uploading to each of our ACC projects?
Good question. No, so yeah, I believe we have it added to all your projects. Go take a look, everybody.
There's a live.
There's a live library. So yeah, I had asked our team to get that one uploaded to all the projects. So it should be in there. If you don't see it, it should be on its way. Or you can shoot an email over and let us know. What's that? Yeah, send an email to econ at QRSE. I'm looking at the chat to see if I see anything else that I maybe didn't touch on. Okay, well, if nothing else, I appreciate everybody listening to me talk for an hour, and thank you guys. We'll have this posted soon. Oh, there is a question.
What if you have a new contractor? Well, this question is, what if you have a new contractor that's not familiar with the contract? That's
Well,
the
he's
summary.
asking if they're not familiar with XER MPP. So Marvin, it is actually required in I'll call it the standard special provisions that they use either P6 or Microsoft projects to generate their schedule. So if basically to answer your question, your contractor, if they're not using either of those formats, it's not following spec.
Preach.
It's but I'm guessing you're saying, if they're using like Microsoft Excel or something to generate their schedule, I would say push back on them and have them put it into either Microsoft projects or P6.
Seems like we allow Excel for 3-week look aheads, but specifically for the progress update schedules, it is in the spec. Another thing that I would recommend enforcing, we had a project on Kauai where halfway through their scheduler moved on to another project, and the new scheduler only knew Microsoft project. So they switched from P6 to Microsoft project, and that messed up our ability to compare in ACC. So once they choose a format, I would encourage them to stay with that format.
They can export a P6 file to Microsoft project. So they could have given you the historical data in projects.
Yes, but the new scheduler does not know how to use P6, and so now her schedules only come in project format, and so those overlay in ACC don't allow the compare function. So that's how we're doing it.
If they're switching, you would require them to switch all of their past schedules.
Yeah.
Yep,
You need it.
we discussed that,
why
and yeah.
So that is actually exactly what we did on Old Lane when we started our project. Yeah. When we started our project, it was using projects, and then about 3 months in, I was working with them on it, and I asked that they basically said, yeah, we're going to switch everything to P6. So I said, well, for our data purposes, you're going to have to rebuild it from the start. So they did have to go and do that, but in the end, it worked out because P6 is, in my opinion, a little bit easier to use.
Good stuff, man.
Are we, yep. So appreciate everybody. Sorry, just chatting here. Thank you guys. We're going to end the meeting now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.